Something happened last week that almost every major news channel in the world started covering at the same time. People everywhere from London to Tokyo, from New York to Cairo, were asking the same question. Where is Benjamin Netanyahu? That question did not come from nowhere. It came from a specific moment, a specific statement, and what happened in the days that followed that statement. And to understand why this question matters so much, you need to understand the full picture. Not just one piece of it. Let us start from the very beginning. On March 2nd, which was the third day of the war between Israel and Iran, the Iranian military made a public announcement. This was not a rumor. This was not a social media post from an unknown account. This was an official statement from the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, which is Iran's most powerful military force. Think of them as the most elite and most politically important part of Iran's entire military system. In that statement, Iran said it had fired missiles at two specific locations inside Israel. The first location was the official office building of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. This is the place where the leader of Israel works, holds meetings, and makes decisions. The second location was the home of the Israeli Air Force commander, a man named Tomer Bar. Iran did not say these were random strikes. Iran said these were carefully planned, precisely aimed attacks. Iran said the strikes were a surprise, meaning Israel did not see them coming in time to stop them. And then, Iran added one sentence that traveled across the entire internet within hours. That sentence said, "Netanyahu's fate is unclear." 4 words. But those 4 words changed everything about how the world was watching this war. Now, when a country makes a claim like that, the normal thing that happens is this: the other side shows you it is not true. A leader appears on camera, gives a speech, he holds a press conference, he posts a video online, he does something that shows the world, here I am fine. The claim is false. Israel's government did respond. They put out a written statement on the same day. The statement called Iran's claims fake news, said the information was false. It was short, it was firm, and it had no video, no live appearance, no press conference, just words on a page. Now, in normal circumstances, that response might have been enough. Governments issue statements all the time. People generally move on. But here's the problem. These are not normal circumstances. Since February 28th, when this war began, Israel has been operating under very strict rules about what the media is and is not allowed to show. International journalists and news cameras cannot freely go into areas that have been hit by strikes. Any damage to Israeli military buildings or leadership locations cannot be published by the press. Israeli news organizations are not allowed to report on how many soldiers have been hurt or killed, or what buildings belonging to the military have been damaged, unless the government officially approves that reporting. What this means in simple terms is that Israel has wrapped a very tight cover around what is actually happening inside the country. And there are real reasons for that. Every country at war tries to control information so the enemy cannot figure out exactly how much damage has been done or where the weak points are. But here's what happens when you control that much information during a crisis. You create a space. An empty space where facts should be. And when that space is empty, people fill it with questions. And questions, when they go unanswered long enough, start to feel like answers of their own. For the 4 or 5 days that followed Iran's announcement, Netanyahu did not appear on live video, did not post anything to social media. He did not stand in front of cameras and speak directly to the world. Israeli media reported he visited a site on March 6th where 9 people had been killed inside a shelter when a missile struck. His office released a written update on March 7th. But there was no extended, clearly dated, clearly live public appearance. That would allow the world to say with absolute certainty, "We saw him, he is fine, the story's over." That gap was enough to keep the question alive. Now, let us talk about something that happened on top of all of this. Because just as the question about Netanyahu was circulating around the globe, a second story broke that made everything feel more serious. 2 of the most senior American officials who deal with the Middle East were scheduled to fly to Israel for direct meetings with Netanyahu. These were not low-level diplomats. These were not routine visits. The first man is Steve Witkoff. He is Donald Trump's personal representative for the Middle East. He has been the one managing the most sensitive and important conversations during this entire period, including talks about releasing hostages, quiet negotiations before the war even started. When Witkoff travels somewhere, it means something important is happening. The second man is Jared Kushner. He is Trump's son-in-law and one of the architects of peace agreements between Israel and Arab countries that were signed a few years ago. Kushner does not go places unless the situation genuinely requires his presence. Both men were supposed to be on a plane to Israel. Both men canceled. No explanation was given. No new date was announced. They simply did not go. When you look at the timing, when you understand that this cancellation came in the same week that Iran was saying Netanyahu's fate was unclear and in the same week that the world was asking where he was, the silence around that canceled trip became its own kind of statement. But to understand why those 2 men canceling their trip is so significant, you need to understand something deeper. You need to understand that the relationship between America and Israel, which looked completely united when this war started 11 days ago, has quietly begun to crack. Here's what happened. When Israel and America launched this military operation together on February 28, they had a general agreement about what targets would be hit. Iran's ability to build nuclear weapons was the main. Destroying Iran's missile systems was part of the plan. Both countries agreed on those priorities. What Israel also did, which America did not fully anticipate, was strike Iranian oil facilities. Oil facilities are where Iran produces and processes oil, which it then sells to make money. Hitting oil facilities is not the same as hitting a military base. It affects global oil prices. When you reduce how much oil is available in the world, the price of oil everywhere goes up. Israel told America that oil facilities would be targets. What Israel did not tell America was how extensive those strikes would be, how many facilities, how large the operation. The result was that global oil prices crossed $120 per barrel last week. That is a level that causes serious economic pain. Prices at the gas pump go up. The cost of shipping goods goes up. Every part of the economy that runs on oil becomes more expensive. And when that happens fast and without warning, governments, businesses everywhere feel it immediately. America was caught off guard. American officials were angry, not quietly, privately angry. Angry in a way that leaked out to news organizations. The Jerusalem Post, one of Israel's most established newspapers, reported that this was the first confirmed public disagreement between Washington and Tel Aviv since the war began. And now, the two men Trump sent to manage the relationship between the two governments are not on a plane to Israel. So let us stop for a moment and look at the full picture, what this adds up to. We have a war that started 11 days ago. The two countries that launched this war together are now openly on the record in disagreement about how it has been conducted. American officials feel they were misled about the scale of oil strikes. Israeli officials are defending their decisions. Neither side has publicly admitted the gap between them, but multiple news organizations have confirmed it exists. On top of that, Iran fires missiles at the Israeli Prime Minister's office and announces that his fate is unclear. The Israeli government responds with a written statement, but no live video appearances for several days. The world starts asking whether the leader of Israel is truly fine and fully in control. And the top American envoys who were supposed to fly to Israel to try to work through these tensions canceled their trip without explanation. Each of these things, on its own, is a significant story. Together, they point to something larger that's happening underneath the surface of this war. Iran is not just fighting this war with missiles. Iran is fighting it with information. And right now, the information side of this war is going very well for Iran. Think about it this way. Imagine two people are in a disagreement and one of them says something that makes everyone watching start to wonder whether the other person is even still standing. Even if the other person is completely fine, even if the claim was exaggerated or false, the damage is already done. People are now watching differently. They are looking for signs. They are noticing things they would not have noticed before. A canceled meeting becomes suspicious. A written statement, instead of a video, becomes suspicious. Every absence of information becomes, in people's minds, a possible piece of evidence. Iran understands this. The statement about Netanyahu's fate was not accidental. It was designed specifically to create this exact environment, an environment where doubt exists, where people are watching, where the question is already in everyone's mind. You do not need to actually hurt a leader to make the world wonder about that leader's condition. You just need to plant the question. Now let us look at the larger situation this war has created, because what is happening with America and Israel is only one part of a much bigger problem. When this operation began, American military planners had a specific idea of how it would go. The plan, as was later described by intelligence officials to multiple news organizations, assumed something about what would happen inside Iran after the initial strikes. Iran's supreme leader, the most powerful person in the country, was killed in the early days of the operation. The plan assumed that when that happened, ordinary Iranian people would rise up, that the government would collapse from the inside, that a new leadership would emerge that did not want to fight, that the war would essentially end itself within days because the Iranian system would fall apart. That plan did not work. Iran chose a new supreme leader very quickly. His name is Mojtaba Khamenei, the son of the previous leader. He had already lost his father, his mother, his wife, his sister, his daughter, and his niece to strikes carried out in this operation. And yet Iran's military kept operating. The missile launches continued. The drone attacks continued. The government's chain of command remained intact. The Iranian population did not rise up. The government did not collapse. The war, that was supposed to last a few days, has now consumed 11 days, nearly $900 million per day in military costs, and there is no clear military resolution in sight. When a plan fails that completely, the priorities of the people running the war change very quickly. America's new priority is no longer about achieving total victory. America's new priority is finding a way out. It does not look like a defeat. A way out means a ceasefire, a defined moment where America can say, "We achieved our goals. We are stepping back." That story is politically necessary because oil at $120 per barrel is beginning to damage the American economy. Financial analysts across the country are now publicly discussing whether a recession is coming if this continues. And no political leader wants to be the person who started a recession. That is why Witkoff was going to Israel, to work on the outlines of an exit, a formula that both America and Israel could agree to call a success. Israel's priority is completely different. Israel is not done. Israel has a longer list of things it wants to accomplish. Drawing Iran's entire missile manufacturing capacity, breaking apart the leadership structure of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. Israel went into this war with ambitions that go beyond what America originally signed on for, and the oil strikes are the clearest example of that gap. Two allies, one war. Two different ideas of what winning looks like. The longer the war goes on, the harder it becomes to keep those two visions pointed in the same direction. The countries surrounding this war are watching all of this very carefully, and what they are seeing is changing their calculations. The nations of the Gulf, countries like Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and Bahrain are critical to this entire operation. These are the countries that host American military bases. The air power, the logistics, the equipment, the intelligence networks, all of the machinery that makes this military operation possible is running through and out of these countries. These countries agreed to allow this because they were told, essentially, the operation would be limited and that it would end quickly, that their populations would not be significantly exposed to danger, that the economic damage would be manageable. None of those things have turned out to be true. Kuwait lost production from oil fields that were struck. Qatar's ability to export its natural gas has been halted. Bahrain's oil refinery went offline. Every day this war continues, these Gulf economies are losing billions. Their civilian populations are living under the threat of missiles. We're not supposed to still be flying 11 days in. And Iran has been very deliberate about this. Iran has publicly communicated something to Gulf countries. If you stop allowing your territory to be used for attacks against Iran will stop attacking your territory. That is a direct offer. It puts Gulf leaders in a position they did not expect to be in when this started. They are now asking a question that no American or Israeli official wants them to be asking. Is America's presence here protecting us, or has America's presence here made us targets? There is also a country on the other side of all of this that has said almost nothing publicly, and yet is benefiting from every single day this continues. That country is Russia. Europe runs on energy. It needs gas and oil to heat homes, run factories, power cities. For the past 2 years, Russia has not been selling its energy to Europe because of the war in Ukraine and the sanctions that followed. Europe had been replacing Russian energy with gas from Qatar and oil from Gulf states. Qatar's gas exports are halted. Gulf oil is disrupted. Global prices are surging toward levels Qatar's own energy minister has publicly said could hit $150 per barrel. Meanwhile, Russia is selling its energy to India and China. Russia is watching Europe suffer an energy crisis that it did not cause, but is absolutely benefiting from. Russia's foreign minister has been calling in Gulf ambassadors and delivering a very clear message: condemn the strikes on Iranian civilian targets. Push for an end to this war. Do not allow yourselves to be dragged further in. The Gulf states did not push back on that message, they listened. So, let us put all of this together one more time, because the question about Netanyahu is the thread that pulls all of this into view. Netanyahu's whereabouts became a global story not because one missile may or may not have reached his office. It became a global story because the world is watching this war and asking bigger questions underneath the surface. Is Israel still fully in control of its decisions? Is the alliance between America and Israel still as strong as it appeared 11 days ago? Is there someone in charge who has a clear plan for how this ends? There are two governments that launched this together, now pulling in different directions. While the costs pile up and every ally in the region quietly steps back, the man himself issued a statement, appeared publicly on certain days, confirmed through his office that he is alive and leading. But the question that his absence from sustained public view created is a question that goes beyond any one person. It's a question about whether the two governments that started this operation together are still together. Because here is what is now visible to anyone paying attention. America wants an exit. Israel wants to continue. The Gulf states that are making the whole operation possible are absorbing economic damage. It is becoming politically impossible to sustain. Russia is collecting the benefits of a war it did not start. Iran's military, 11 days in, has not stopped operating for a single, and the two senior American officials who were supposed to fly to Israel to try to bridge the gap between Washington and Tel Aviv are not on a plane. That is where this war stands right now. Wars have two fronts. There is the battlefield where missiles fly and explosions happen and territory is gained or lost. And then there is the other front, the one that is harder to see, often more decisive. The front where the story is shaped, where the questions are asked, where the doubts are planted, where the alliances either hold together or begin to separate. On the battlefield, both sides are still fighting. Thousands of strikes have been carried out. Facilities have been destroyed. People on both sides have been killed. But on the other front, the one that does not show up in satellite images or missile counts, something else is happening. Iran planted a question. That question grew into a global story. That global story revealed a real crack between the two governments running this operation. That crack is now visible to every government watching from the outside. And every government watching from the outside is adjusting its position based on what it sees. Netanyahu is alive. His office has said so. His appearances in subsequent days have confirmed it. What Iran's statement accomplished and what the silence and the cancelled flights and the reported disagreements have amplified is something that cannot be easily undone. It put the question of who is really in charge into the mind of every leader in the world. And in a war where alliances are everything, where the American military bases in the Gulf are what make the entire operation possible, where the price of oil is determining how long any government can politically sustain this, the most dangerous thing is not a missile. The most dangerous thing is the moment your partners start asking whether you still know what you are doing. That moment arrived this week.